At the end of week one, as promised, President Donald Trump is easing into the advancement of U.S. interests as a global model on foreign policy. Today, President Trump held a press conference with UK Prime Minister Theresa May.
There are many issues on which the United Kingdom and the United States stand alongside one another, many issues on which we agree. And I think, as I said yesterday in my speech, that we are at a moment now when we can build an even stronger special relationship, which will be in the interests not just of the UK and the United States, but actually in the interests of the wider world as well.
President Trump has been very aggressive on his stance regarding immigration. Prime Minister May echoes Trump's position.
A future that sees us take back control of the things that matter to us. Things like our national borders and immigration policy and the way we decide and interpret our own laws, so that we are able to shape a better, more prosperous future for the working men and women of Britain.
In spite of this formation of excellent relations with the UK, our southern neighbor, Mexico, has been blindsided by President Trump's disgust with the cozy billion-dollar trade relations Mexico has enjoyed for the past 25 years. Market Watch reports after running a trade deficit with the U.S. from 1991 to 1994, Mexico moved to a surplus in 1995, and that's been the case ever since. As a result, U.S. imports from Mexico soared from $65 billion when the North American trade deal was passed to around $295 billion in 2016. However, the U.S. has been helped too, especially in border states such as Texas. Exports to Mexico have climbed from $68 billion in 1994 to an estimated $235 billion in 2016. As Trump pointed out, though, the U.S. is on track to run a trade deficit of close to $60 billion with Mexico in 2016, according to government data. That's about 12% of the nation's overall annual trade gap. In essence, this NAFTA transfer of wealth has benefited a small group of corrupt overlords, while the Bank of America launders cartel money and American industry is bled dry. After canceling a meeting with President Trump due to the outrage over Trump's insistence that the U.S. border be protected, Mexican President Peña Nieto reportedly had a phone conversation with President Trump following the cancellation.
I will say that we had a very good call. I have been very strong on Mexico. I have great respect for Mexico. But it was a very, very friendly call. I think you'll hear that from the president, and I think you'll hear that from the people of Mexico. And I look forward to, over the coming months, we'll be negotiating and we'll see what happens. But I'm representing the people of the United States, and I'm going to represent them as somebody should represent them, not how they've been represented in the past, where we lose to every single country.
While populism and the excitement of righting all of the globalist wrongs done to the United States continue to push President Trump's approval ratings to 59% and beyond in the United States, Mexican President Peña Nieto's approval ratings are at a dismal 12% in Mexico. Nieto is regarded as yet another detached leader by the majority of Mexicans. And why not? A recent 20% increase in gas prices, a huge burden to the Mexican people who have broken their backs to earn higher wages and hopes of supporting an infrastructure that is desperately needed, a better power grid, better water treatment facilities, better plumbing, an end to the corruption and cartel violence that has terrorized Mexico for far too long, claiming the lives of at least 164,000 people between 2007 and 2014, a number that makes the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq look like a walk in the park. Where has all of the NAFTA surplus trade money gone? Apparently not into the pockets of the Mexican people. John Baum for Infowars.com.
Beijing has warned the new U.S. administration to stay out of the territorial dispute in the South China Sea. It's what's seen as a rare move. A senior Chinese foreign ministry official spoke to the U.S. media to deliver Beijing's message to Donald Trump.
There might be difference or controversial claims over the sovereignty over those islands, but that's not for the United States.
A strong message there from China issued to the new US president. While Donald Trump himself is known for his hostile approach towards China, however, as Emily Sue reports, the previous administration has already done a lot to worsen the relations between Washington and Beijing.
Taking on China was one of Trump's big election promises, and the mainstream media don't like it one bit. They say he's ruining decades of hard work.
Donald Trump did something that no U.S. leader has done since 1979.
We have the President of the United States with the strongest anti-China rhetoric, if you will.
Trump's victory, arguably bad news for U.S.-China relations.
But hold on a sec, were things really as rosy as claimed?
If we don't write the rules for trade around the world, guess what? China will.
China continues cyber espionage against the United States.
In 2011, we saw Barack Obama's pivot to Asia. The plan was to, quote, provide a balance to China's rising influence. Obama then made rosy relations rosier by ratcheting up America's military presence in the Asia-Pacific region to 368,000 troops in 2015. Last year, the U.S. sent Navy destroyers to conduct 4 military patrols right in China's backyard. And Obama had no intention of stopping there, vowing to move 60% of U.S. naval and overseas assets to the Pacific region.
The US sent warships into Chinese waters close to reefs off the Nansha Islands, which severely violated our sovereignty and security and heightened tensions in the region. Which of us is the real rule breaker and troublemaker? I think the facts have spoken for themselves.
Washington's argument has been that its patrols are there to ensure Beijing doesn't limit the freedom of navigation in the region, which is a bit odd, as unlike China, the U.S. never ratified the UN convention that covers this. And don't forget, America has military ties with almost everyone in the region, effectively surrounding Beijing with pro-US forces. Among them is Taiwan, which China sees as a breakaway province. Washington's ties with Taipei have long rattled Beijing, long before Donald Trump spoke with the Taiwanese president on the phone last month. The U.S. has been arming Taiwan since the 70s, and Obama alone sold $14 billion worth of weapons to Taipei. Also keeping things rosy were Obama's ties with the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader who Beijing accuses of helping a separatist movement in Tibet. Obama met him not once, but 4 times.
It would send a wrong signal to the Tibet independent separatists and hurt the China-US mutual trust and cooperation.
President Obama lacked a vision as to how China-US relations should be developed. He was very much focused on the day-to-day operations and ups and downs, hiccups between China and the United States, but he did not have a long-term vision about how China-US relations should be developed and how China and the United States should look at each other.
So, fair enough, if Trump keeps up his anti-China rhetoric, China-US ties will no doubt take a turn for the worse. But he definitely wasn't the one who started it all.
The rivalry is widely seen as a battle for global dominance. And while Trump is pledging to put America first, China has given hints it's not opposed to taking the lead as well.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
It's not China that's rushing to the front, but rather the front runners have stepped back, leaving the place to China. If China is required to play that leadership role, then China will assume its responsibilities.
Meanwhile, some media outlets are claiming it's already 1-0 to China, at least in terms of economic influence in the region. That's after Trump effectively killed off the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal.
TPP, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, was a proposed deal between the US and almost a dozen other states, aimed at slashing tariffs and trade barriers. Then Donald Trump decided to pull the US out the deal. So, end of story for the massive free trade project. Well, TPP is not the only horse in the race. There's another global trade agreement brewing called RCEP, or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. It actually includes all of America's former TPP partners in the Asia-Pacific region, plus 8 more states, and probably most importantly, China, Washington's #1 economic rival, but not America. And with the US now out of the region's trade deal game, well, chances are shaping up quite nicely for Beijing.
Earlier, we discussed the future prospects for US-China relations with Wall Street investment analyst and author Charles Ortle.
Yes, in theory, countries closer to China may decide that it's wiser to forge closer ties with China than it is to depend upon the American umbrella in the Pacific region. But I also think and know many of these business people around the world, they're going to embrace what's going on because Trump is changing, resizing, rewriting the calculation that you make as an investor about where to put your money. It's much smarter to have wealth in this country than it ever was before. In China, we actually have a lot more areas of potential common ground than we do areas of stark underlying disagreement. So I would hope that what Trump is doing here is blustering and getting set to do his masterful negotiating, something that he's very skilled at doing.